Welcome to another episode of Crypto Novus, where a novice can become a master. I'm your host, Chris Brown, and today what we're going to be looking at is I've been doing some thinking about where Bitcoin price action could go. November's been a really interesting month for the asset over the years, and so what I did for myself is I wanted to take a look at what the price action was like during the month of November for the past 4 years, started in 2016. There's two reasons for that. One is it was an election year like this year, but also it was the beginning of the bull run that led up to the price action of 20,000 in 2017. So I thought looking back at the last 4 years would give me and you an idea of what exactly has happened in the past and what potentially could happen in the future in the next few days between now and the end of November. So, with no further ado, let's take a look at the information and see what we learn. So the first thing we see, what I've got is my trading view chart up, price chart up, and we're taking a look at, in the month of November, this is the daily chart first off, and we can kind of see, back in September, Bitcoin was at 10.4. Today it's like at 15.5, which is an incredible percentage increase. We can see clearly looking at the daily chart that when the month of November hit, which was right here, the price was around 13.6 and it's shot all the way up looking at this wick of 15.9. So let's take a look at the 4-hour chart, which gets us a little bit closer to the information. So again here, November 1st was sitting right about here, and we can tell during that week of time in the end of October to basically November 2nd, the price was relatively the same. And so, let's just say it was at 13.7, 13.7 or so. And then it dropped a little bit, came down to 13.3, stayed there, it was riding the 50 EMA. The blue line represents the 50 EMA. So it stayed there for a few days. Then we get here to basically election day, which was the 3rd. It started up at 14,000, took a little dip down to 13.6, and then it just shot up from there. I had mentioned in a previous video that it would retrace some, and what we can see is that it went horizontal for a little while, and then on basically the 7th, which was yesterday, it dropped, and it dropped all the way down. It wicked all the way down just below the 50 EMA to about 14.4. 14.422 is where it's marking there, and since then, today it basically has come back up to 15.5, 15.623. So let's take a look, start in 2016, and see what has happened with Bitcoin in the month of November. So here's a chart, another Bitcoin chart. This is on Crypto Compare, which, like I said, excuse me, not Crypto Compare, Coin Market Cap. And so on this site, what you can do is you can go to Bitcoin charts, and up here in this area you can actually pick a time frame upon which you want to look at a particular asset and its price action during that time frame. So basically I've got plugged in here October 30th 2016 to November 27th. All right, so the first thing that we can see is that Bitcoin came in at around, the price action was around 692, and then it finished over here at about 733. So make a long story short, it did, in the month of November, it did climb up, and we'll get into percentages of that later. But what we can see is that in 2016, Bitcoin was fighting to, I'm going to say, push through a level of resistance because what we see is in the beginning of the month, it peaked here at 744, around 744, 744, 738. And that was on the 2nd. Well, it immediately dropped down to a price level of, if I can find it, about 688. Okay. And that was a price drop of about $50, which was about a 6.7% drop. And so that happened on the 3rd, around the 3rd. And then from there, it started to fight and climb back up. And what it did is it almost reached the same level. It came to 637 on the 9th. But then it didn't see such a dramatic drop. And so it over the next, between the 9th and the 13th, which is essentially 4 days, let's say a little less than a week, it dropped all the way down to about 689. And so that was, if you look at that from 738 to about 688, 689, you're looking at about a $50 drop. And that's about a 6.7% drop overall. After the 13th and the middle of the month, you're going to find pretty interesting as we go through the various charts. It started to climb again aggressively, and then it shot up on around the 17th, and then it started to reach some resistance, it looks. And so, around the 16th, we have about $750. It comes down a little bit, and then it comes over to here, and it peaks at around 755. Then it drops off drastically again and bottoms out at around 718. And so from 754.55 to 718, that's about a $36 drop or a 7.7% drop. And then of course it finishes off out here at 732. So we can look at if at the beginning of the month it started like about 692, it ended around 732. We've got about a $40 increase, so that's about a 5.7% increase for the month. So let's see what happens in 2017 when we're right before Bitcoin hit its all-time high of just under 20,000. So here's 2017, and there's a little less dramatic price action and volatility and fluctuation. The coin enters the month right around 63.50, so it's a little over $6,000. It doesn't have like a real strong spike. It kind of peaks out, you could say 74, 75, 23 here, or here there was a number at 76.80. So I'm going to say 76.80 was its peak, and that was on the 8th, which would be today. And then from here, it didn't drop off a cliff, but it went down. And it dropped all the way down to, let me find it, 55.84, which was a $2,096 drop or 27.2%. Then it had a little bit of fluctuation, and then it was just a gradual incline up for the rest of the month with with a few blips. There was one here where it peaked and then it dropped down, but not a lot. And then when it hit about the 24th of the month, it really began to take a run. It had a run, and it went all the way up to 97.38. So if you look at this month and you think about its starting point, it was at 61.28. It went to about 98.18. That's an increase of about $3,690 or 60% increase in the month. Now, again, this was in 2017, right before it peaked. The price peaked just under 20,000. Now, the next 2 years, 2018 and 2019, were in not a bull run period, but in a decline period. And that's when you know, Bitcoin was not seeing the price increases that it was. In fact, it was, it was in a bear market. So, in 18, oh, let me go back to 17 real quick. In 17, what you'll find again is right in through here where it dipped. On Saturday, November 11th and 17, that's when it dipped down to 55.84. Here we go. It almost came down. It went below 6,000 on the 12th. So again, middle of the month, not the exact middle of the month, basically the second week. You can say the second week of November, it was a dip. So let's take a look at 18. So here's 18. It starts off the month pretty flat. It enters into the month basically at 63.93, and it stays pretty much flat. 5th, kind of peaks here at the 6th. It's at 65.38. So, yeah, 38. And then it starts a gradual descent. And it just kind of takes a gradual descent all the way to this point, which was at the 14th. Again, look at the dates. So on the 14th, that's when it decides to come off a cliff, and then it finishes that little run and drops down to 53.71. So if you think the starting point was around 65.23 and that ends here at about 53.71, you've got about an $1,152 dollar drop, which is about 17%. Then again, it just has kind of accumulation, kind of a gradual decline, but stays relatively flat. And then from the 18th to 19th, so for about 2 days, it just again, comes off of a cliff, tries to recuperate a little bit, but then continues down to 43.66. And then, it just continues down all the way till the 28th. Yeah, about the 28th is pretty much where it hits kind of bottom at 36.68. So if you look at from 53 and change up here, 53.71 to 36.88, which is down here, you've lost a little over $1,700 in value, which is a 31.7% drop. It tries to peak peaks up a little bit here, comes back down, and then it finishes off at the month at about 42.57. So it lost significant money in that particular month. Now let's take a look at 19. 19, a quick visual analysis of the chart basically shows kind of the same pattern, right? It starts off the beginning of the month. November 1, I'll go with the high one up at 93.23. Is when it starts off. I think a 90, it could be 94.52, I think is something like that. Let's say 93.23. And then it goes relatively horizontal. I mean, there's some fluctuation, but it peaks out right here again. If you look at the date on the 4th at 94.74, and then it starts a gradual decline down, reaches the 7th, kind of drops off of a small cliff down to a price tag of 88.08, and still just kind of goes kind of horizontal for a while. And then around here's the 7th, decides to gain back up to about 9,000, and then boom, it hits here at about 87.30. Okay, so from that peak of around 94.52 to that the high 87s or so, it dropped approximately about $660, which is about a 6.97% drop. Again, this is the 11th. So let's see, as it went from the 11th, let's kind of go through and see. Here's the 21st. So right there was the 12th. No, that's the 12th. Here's the 13th. There's the 14th. Boom, there's the 15th. So in this case, kind of the middle of the second week of the month, it was a gradual decline. It didn't like drop off a cliff, but it did from basically the 8th to the 15th, there was a drop. And then after that, again, this is a bear market. It just declined all the way down to 66.88. So it went from like an 87.92 price tag to 66.88. That was about a little over a $2,000 drop, which was about 23.9%, 24%. And then it finished off up from there, but it still was lower than its entry point of around a little over of around 9,400 to an exit point of $7,500. So that's kind of the analysis of the last 4 years. So let's take a look at and so with that, I mean that's kind of an interesting information. Again, we can see consistently that around the middle of the month, and I'm going to go back to the chart at 16. The second week of the month, there tended to be a decline, and then once it reached that point, it either continued to decline or started to incline. So it's commercial time real quick. So if you're liking the information you got so far, do me a favor, smash the like button. As you know, it helps with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps me grow the channel. So I would appreciate it if you do it, and if you find this information helpful. So let's go back to the TradingView chart, and let's dig into, this is the 4-hour. Let's take a look at the 2-hour chart and see where we're at, because this gives us from this point to today where we're at. So, we did, so here's the thought, what could Bitcoin do? And the question is, could Bitcoin, there's been some discussions within the community, can Bitcoin reach 20,000 this month is a question. There is some thought that it could definitely hit, 18, it's got to break some resistance around 16,000. If it can do that, there's very little resistance from there to 18,000. It could rush up really fast. I have a thought of where this could go. So let's look at where we're at, where we've been. Okay, so basically, in 2020, Bitcoin basically entered the month of November at around 17,000 and 817, and it pretty much went horizontal there for basically the first day. We get into the second, there's a little bit of a decline. Here we hit election day, right here on the 3rd, and it peaks up to around 14,000, drops down, comes back down to the 50 EMA. So at the beginning of the month, it was basically hovering around the 50 EMA. All right. Once election day was pretty much over, then it did an aggressive run up all the way up to the 15.9. Then it had some consolidation, a little volatility, not much. And then yesterday on the 7th, it basically decided to retrace back by surpassing and going below the 50 EMA, wicking all the way down to 14. Looks like 14. I'm going to say 14.3, just 14.4. Let's just say 14.4, and now it's back up. So let's kind of look at what that is in terms of percentage. So if we say that Bitcoin's high was 15.9, and then it dropped down to, let's say, 14.4, 14.416, that's around $1,400, almost $1,500, which is about a 9.3% drop from its high. if we compare today, 2020, with what happened in 2016, 2016, the price started at 692, went up about 5.7% to 732. If we take the same 5.7% and with our starting point of about 13,788, that 6% roughly would only be about $785. If you add that to the 13, we'd be at 14,578. Well, we've clearly passed that. If we go to 2017 and we look at the 60% increase that occurred in that month, our starting point of 13,788 would increase another $8,302, which if you added that to the 13,788, we'd be at 22,000, just over 22,000. So the question is do we think that Bitcoin could go from where it's at right now, which is 15,542, to another $5,000? That's the question on the table. So I've given it some thought, and in my opinion, I don't think it will reach 20,000. And here's one of the reasons why. This is a chart that basically shows year-to-date Bitcoin's price increase. And here's 20K sitting right up here. We're sitting at 15,005. In order for Bitcoin to reach 20,000 by the end of the month, it would have to do pretty much a parabolic rise. And I'm not feeling that it'll do that. I think it'll come close to 20,000. I think Bitcoin will probably hit somewhere around I think it'll break 16. I think once it does that, I think it'll rush to try to hit the 20, but I don't think it'll make it. I'm going to guess Bitcoin's going to end up somewhere at the end of the month around 18 or 19,000. Just a guess. I can't say that I'm an expert at this. There's some other things I want to study before I can really firmly say that it'll do that, which we'll look into it at later episodes. But right now, I'm going to say 18, 19 is probably where it's going to hit. I think it'll just stay underneath 20 is my call at this point. Question is, what do you think? Love to know your opinion. Down in the comments section, if you think I'm close, if you think I'm way off, if you think whatever, what do you think the price tag would wind up being at the end of the month, in the last day of November? That's what we're talking about. What will the price be of Bitcoin? Would love to hear from you. So that kind of concludes this episode. I hope you enjoyed the information. I had a good time just kind of looking through it for my own personal edification. And if you did, please subscribe, join the channel, become a part of the community. And remember, this is the Crypto Novus channel, and this is where a novice can become a master. See you in the next episode.